Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Inna alhamdulillah. Wa salatu wa salamu ala ashrafil anbiya wa ala alihi wa ashabihi wa man wala. Wa ba'd. Inshallah, we will have our session now on parenting, the rights and responsibilities of parents. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make this session a source of great khair and barakah in all your lives, because this is the only thing that spans generations. When we are talking about bringing up children, you are looking at least 2 generations. Your children and their children. Because what you teach them is what they will teach the next generation. So when you're talking about bringing up children, you're looking at least 2 generations. My brothers and sisters, the people who understand the importance of bringing up children, the importance of mind steering, the importance of creating iconic role models, the importance of creating need inside the children. Unfortunately, the people who understand that the best and who do that the best are the people in the advertising world who are selling consumer products. I remember a headline in a newspaper in South Africa when I was there several years ago, which said, "Miss a beat and you lose a generation." Miss a beat and you lose a generation. My respectful question to you is, how many of you as parents have thought of that with regard to your own children? Miss a beat and you lose a generation. But the guy selling Pepsi and Coke, the guy selling cigarettes, the people selling branded clothing, the people selling sneakers, everybody is thinking like that. They want to create a need in the younger generation as early as possible. They want a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old to get focused on the latest smartphone, on the latest iPad, iPod, whatever, because they know that if they get that little child to want these things, then they have a human being for the next 50 years. And they have 2 more generations after that. I wish we as parents, and especially as Muslim parents, had at least this much awareness. But we don't. Let me ask you this question. Let me see, who is here who has... how many kids do you have? 3 kids. How many kids do you have? You also have 3 kids. How many children do you have? Kids are the children of goats. They're not the children of human beings. Our children are not brought up properly because you're bringing up kids. Bagri ke bacche paal rahe aap. So they are well fed, they are warm, they are dry, they have clothes, but they have no tarbiyah, they have no understanding of anything. I'm not talking about the children of these people, because they call them kids, but I know them personally, so that's a different matter. I'm saying generally speaking, people bring up kids, and that is the number 1 problem. So first recognize the fact and say that I have children, I don't have kids. If somebody tells you how many kids do you have, you say I have no kids, I have children. Because I am not a goat. For me to have kids, I should have to be a goat. Because only goats have kids, right? If I ask you how many calves do you have, will you give me an answer? 3. And how many chickens do you have? Will you tell me 3? No, because we've got this mental, it's the same thing. I mean, Next question. I want to give this to you as an exercise, 10-second exercise. Think of a role model in your mind, quickly. Name, think of a role. Don't have to tell me, just think of a role model, right? You thought of a role model? For how many of you is it a parent? Now I want to see some hands. How many of you is it a parent? Usual number. I only take the first hand which goes up. The second batch of hands is always contrived, thought of. Less than 5% of the people in this room. What does it mean? It means that for 95% of the population, a role model is not a parent. Somebody else. Maybe somebody better than the parent, we don't know, but I'm just saying as a parent, a role model is not a parent. The tragedy is, parents, and of course also teachers, are the two people, are the two adults in the life of a child who have the maximum face time with that child. But the tragedy is that I don't know what you are doing with that face time. The child sees no value in it. And so, the child does not have you as a role model. Now, ask this question to the adults, and less than 5% of the adults in this room have parents as role models. Now, I want to go a step further. What if your children were sitting here, and if I asked them the same question, who is your role model? And then I said, is it a parent? What do you think they will say? I'm not saying they will not say that you are a role model. Maybe they will say, but that's for you to decide. Do you think that your child considers you to be a role model, somebody to look up to, somebody to admire, somebody to aspire to be like, somebody to imitate, somebody to follow? Or, I'm not saying your child hates you. The child doesn't hate you, you're just irrelevant. You just don't count. If you are the father, you are the ATM machine. If you are the mother, you are the card. As far as the child is concerned, you are the source of money. If he wants something, he goes and asks you. That's it, period. How many of us are in that situation? Final question before I launch off. How many of you would like to remain in that situation? Good, alhamdulillah. So you don't want to remain in that situation, right? So let's see what can be done. First and foremost point is everything begins with loyalty to the one who is supreme. Loyalty to whom? In that loyalty there is no contradiction, there is no compromise. And that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Excuse me. So the first and foremost thing is loyalty to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So teach the child, connect the child to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Umar bin Abdul Aziz, the great Khalifa, was dying. His last moments of life. And Umar bin Abdul Aziz was a Khalifa who, as we know, was a very pious man, he was a muhaddith himself, and he was a very pious man and a very, very good ruler. And when Umar bin Abdul Aziz was actually, he was a nephew of the Khalifa Malik bin Marwan, so he was himself from the royal family, so to speak, and he married the daughter of Malik ibn Marwan. So his wife also was a princess. When he became Khalifa, and Malik bin Marwan chose Umar bin Abdul Aziz, he chose his nephew over his own sons, because Al-Walid was there and others were there. But Malik bin Marwan picked the person who was better than his own children. So when he became Khalifa, he said to his wife, he said to her, what would you like to do? Do you want us to live pleasing ourselves, or do you want us to live pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And his wife also was a pious woman, and she said, let us choose to live to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he said, then bring all your jewelry, because your jewelry came from your father and your father's money came from taxes from the people which he was not entitled to take. He said, bring all your jewelry and we put it into the Baitul Mal. We give it back to the state. So all the jewelry of this princes of the house of Banu Umayyah was taken and given away in charity, worth millions. And Umar bin Abdul Aziz rahmatullahi alayhi and his wife, they lived a life of great simplicity. To the extent that when he was dying, his daughters and his sons were with him, his wife was with him, and his brother-in-law Walid bin Marwan came. And he said to him, he said, you know, my cousin, you have beggared yourself. You have made yourself destitute. And these children of yours, they have nothing. You have no inheritance to leave to these children. He said, at least now, permit me to give them a gift. And he said, I will give them 100,000 gold dinars each. So they can start off in life, they can do something in life. I'm talking about connecting your children to Allah. Umar ibn Abdul Aziz rahmatullah alayhi, he said to his brother-in-law, he said, go away. Go away. Leave me and leave them. He said, I have taught them how to take from the treasures of Allah. When they need something, they will ask Allah and Allah will give them. They don't need you. He said, go away. So my question to you, and with due respect, how many of you have taught your children how to take from the treasures of Allah? And my question is, do you know how to take from the treasures of Allah? So that is the first point. Connect to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The second point related with that is connect to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And that is by emulating and practicing the sunnah of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Please understand this and stop fooling yourself. There is no connection to Allah without connection to Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. I did not say it, Allah said it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, قُلْ إِن كُنْتُمْ تُحِبُّونَ اللَّهَ فَاتَّبِعُونِي يُحْبِبْكُمُ اللَّهُ وَيَغْفِرْ لَكُمْ ذُنُوبَكُمْ وَاللَّهُ غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, say to those who want to connect with me, say to those who claim to love me. He said to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the Quran, he said, say to them, O Muhammad, fattabi'uni, imitate me, follow my sunnah. The first most visible sunnah for the men is the beard. Don't fool yourself. If you do not have a beard, you are neither connected to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam nor to Allah. As I told you, not my opinion. This is the Quran. This is the Quran. If you do not have a beard as a man, according to the Sharia of Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you are considered to be a fasiq. You are considered to be a rebellious person. According to Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullah alayhi, who most of you who follow, he said, for a person without a beard to lead salah is haram. To pray behind him, your salah is not valid. If he gives witness, do not take his witness because he has no beard, he has shaved his beard, he has deliberately broken the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which is haram. As I told you, like me, don't like me, makes no difference. This is the Sharia of Islam. Stop fooling yourself. There is no way to Allah without going through Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the way to go through Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is not to stand and say salam and not to, spin around and do all kinds of bid'at nonsense, is to follow the sunnah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in every aspect of your life, every aspect. Not pick and choose the sunnah. Not pick and choose the sunnah. Selective obedience is disobedience. We obey the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam whether or not we like it. We have been conditioned, our minds have been conditioned to say that if you have a beard, you don't look handsome, or you this or that or whatnot. This is conditioning from the sources outside of Islam. The beard is the sunnah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It is what he used to do. It is what he ordered his people to do. He said, grow your beard and trim your mustache. It's a specific hukum of the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So when you are shaving your beard, you are disobeying a sunnah in two ways. You are disobeying a direct order of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which is why Imam Abu Hanifa and others said the person is a fasiq, he is a rebellious person, because he is going against a direct instruction of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which is haram. And you are also disobeying a practice of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which he used to do. To obey the sunnah, ittiba, is to do whatever he used to do, whether or not he ordered it. Which is what Allah told us to do. Ittiba, fattabi'uni. A step beyond that is to obey an order. The beard is ittiba wal ita'at. It is imitation and obedience. So connect your children to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Not by talking about it, not by telling stories, but by demonstrating. Remember and listen that children and people, adults and children, they listen with their eyes, not with their ears. You can talk till the cows come home, it has no effect. They are waiting to see what you do. And they will only do what you do. You can say whatever you want. You can tell them you must always speak the truth. But they will never speak the truth until they see you speaking the truth and paying a price for it. Not just speaking the truth. Speaking the truth when there is a price to pay. Then they will speak the truth. And let me tell you, let me illustrate that with a true life story. The story is the story of Mahatma Gandhi when he used to live in South Africa. And his son has narrated this story. Now in South Africa, in the days of apartheid and segregation, the housing of the whites was separate, and then the housing of the Indians, and then the housing of the blacks, the black African people. So if an Indian person or a black person wanted to go to work, he had to necessarily travel a long distance, because all the businesses were located conveniently to white housing. So Gandhiji used to work in a law firm, and his son said, I used to drive, he said it was roughly about 25 something kilometers away, and I used to drive him to work. I would drop him, and in the evening I would go and pick him back. So he said, one day I went to watch a movie. Now, Gandhiji was, as we know, he was Salafi, he was, he was strong values. So he was like most of us, he was against movies and against all these wrong influences. So he didn't permit his children to watch films. But his son said, there was this nice film and so on, so I decided to go. So I went to see the film. And he said, I got engrossed in the film, I forgot all about the time, and by the time I got out of the film, it was way past Gandhiji's pickup time. It was, he says, more than an hour, maybe more. So I was rushing off to pick up my father. Now for his fate, in the meanwhile, there was one of Gandhiji's friends who was also in the movie hall. And he saw Gandhiji's son in the movie theater. And remember, we are talking about the, 40s or something, late 30s, 40s. So obviously no cell phones and so on and so forth. But like all good people, this person took all the trouble to go and find a phone, maybe even paid some money to make the phone call. And he made the phone call only to tell Gandhiji, I saw your son in the cinema theater. Such wonderful friends and such helpful people in the world. So his son said, when I reached my father asked me, why are you late? What happened? I'm talking about the fact that children listen with their eyes. And they don't care what you say until they see what you do. So he said, when I reached my father said, why are you late? What happened? So he said, I said to my father, the car broke down, so I had to take it to a mechanic. He said, then my father told me, but so-and-so phoned me and told me that he saw you in this cinema theater. Is that true? So his son said, well, I got caught. Obviously it is true. So he said, yes, I'm sorry, I went to see the movie. So he said, my father then said to me, he said, I have always taught you to speak the truth no matter what. I've always taught you, I said, do not compromise. Speak the truth no matter what. But somewhere I have failed. Somewhere I have failed. Because you are afraid to speak the truth in front of me. And you had to tell a lie. So he said, it is my failure. Somewhere I failed to convince you that you must always speak the truth. And therefore, I am going to punish myself for this failure. And so today, I am going to walk home. And his son says, my father walked home 25 kilometers in the night. We are talking about the bush veld in South Africa. There's no pavements and roads and stuff. And Gandhiji was no athlete, he was no Iron Man. And 25 kilometers is a good day's march. Even at peak fitness. If you're doing 5 kilometers an hour, which is pretty fast walking, and we're not talking about a treadmill, we're talking about actually ups and downs and whatnot. If you're doing 5 kilometers an hour, that's 5 hours of walking, and you cannot continue 5 kilometers an hour, hour after hour for 5 hours, unless you are a trained athlete or unless you are in the military or something and you are used to that. For a normal person sitting in a desk job, you make him walk 25 kilometers, he takes a lot longer than 5 hours. His son says, my father walked home. He said, I slowly drove the car behind him to keep the lights on the road because there's no lights, no street lights. So it was almost morning by the time my father got home. He was almost on a state of collapse. But he said the result of that was that from that day onwards, he said, I have never told a lie in my life. He said, I have never told a lie. So give your children memories. You want to bring up your children, give them memories. When they think, especially when they come to critical decisions in their lives, let your face come up before them. When they need something, let your face come up before them. When they have a dilemma, they have a moral dilemma, should I choose this or should I choose that? Let your face come up before them. And that will happen in only one way, is when you live your values, not when you talk about your values. When you live your values. In all my teaching of Tazkiyatun Nafs and in my teaching of how to connect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the thing that I emphasize most is the importance of what? What do I most emphasize on? Which practice do I emphasize most on? Tahajjud. Tahajjud. And every time I say the word tahajjud, I remember my father. Because the one overwhelming, dominant memory I have of my father is that he never missed tahajjud as long as he lived. As long as he could pray, he never missed tahajjud for 40 plus years. 40 plus years of what I remember. He prayed more longer than that. And these were the days before hot and cold running water and so on. So we used to hear him, and these were the days before plastics. So you had buckets of metal buckets, And we used to hear the sound of the bucket and the mug in the bathroom, him making wudu at 2:30 in the night. And then we would hear him praying, we would hear his recitation, and after he finished tahajjud, he would sit and read Quran. And then close to the time of Salatul Fajr, he would wake us up. And he would come in the room and say, Salatu khairum minan nawm. And he would pull off our blankets. Give your children memories. Second very important thing is the self-esteem of children. Now, self-esteem is one of the things that has been greatly misunderstood, especially in the West, to the extent that we have now in the West rules which almost guarantee failure. Teachers and parents are not allowed to punish children, no matter what. Corporal punishment out of the question. Beating a child or something is out of the question, and I am also not in favor of that. I am not sort of sitting here advocating that you should thrash your children regularly every Thursday afternoon. But even correcting children is considered to be something which should not be done, neither schools nor, and therefore we have in the West, especially in America, in the secondary schools and high schools, we have a huge moral dilemma of what to do with children, because they are not children, they are young adults, and result is a very high rate of teen pregnancies, very high rate of AIDS and all kinds of things, because there is no correction. The problem with the self-esteem business begins because you praise children for being, not for doing. And therefore, my rule is praise them for doing, not for being. What I mean is praise achievement. Praise something that they do. Praise good manners. Don't praise the physical appearance of the child. Don't say, oh, mashallah, how tall he is. Nobody says, oh, mashallah, how short he is. Our whole orientation. If you're talking about height, you should be able to, you should praise both. If you're a very short child, you should say, wow, this is a bantam, Highly energy efficient. The tall guy is highly energy inefficient. Needs more food to sustain. So what are you praising? He's tall because he's got some genes from somewhere. What is his achievement? They say, oh, he's so handsome. Oh, she's so beautiful. So what? Big deal. So what? Allah made them like that. Why are you praising that? The reason I'm saying it is because you put false ideas into their heads. They feel that just being like that is enough, achieved in life. I'm handsome. My mother used to tell this little story when I was growing up. She said, I'll tell you the story in Urdu and then translate it. हमारी वालदा बोलते थे एक लड़का पैदा हुआ, तो कहा कि उसका नाम क्या रखा? तो कहा नाम रखा कुत्ता बिल्ली। लोगों ने कहा ये क्या नाम है कुत्ता बिल्ली? तो कहा नहीं, अगर कुछ काम करेगा तो नाम रख देंगे खुद वाली, नहीं तो कुत्ता बिल्ली काफी है। So he kept some nonsensical name, and so they said, what kind of a name is this? They said, if he achieves something, then he will get a good name. Otherwise, let it be. What does it matter? So praise them for achievement. If they learn something, they do something, they show some qualities. There was one, I remember seeing this movie clip. In primary school, there was this school sports, which, so there was this whole bunch of young kids, young children, about maybe 7, 8 years old or something, in a race. So the race starts, and all these children are running, and one of them trips and falls. So that entire line, they stop, they come back, They pick up that child and then they all run together to the final finishing line. Now what kind of a race is that? Do you call that a race? But if only we had races like that, 3/4 of the world's problems you wouldn't have. In my other incarnation of leadership training and family business consulting, one of the things that I do is I work with family businesses, business families, restructuring their businesses and so on and so forth, and also in helping them do succession planning. And one of the things I invariably find is huge conflicts between brothers, between brother and sister, between parents and children. I'm talking about big time conflicts. I'm talking about court cases. I'm talking about they will not see each other's face. I'm talking about situations where the brother's children will not say salam to their uncle. I'm talking about cases where the children, and now we are talking about people in their 40s, not children anymore, they don't go and meet their parents. I know a family where the sons have sued their own mother. And you know where it all starts? It starts when they are little. It starts with sibling rivalry. It starts when they are little, and parents, may Allah forgive them, parents not only don't discourage, they actually encourage sibling rivalry. They set up one child against the other. Some of it is unconscious, some of it is conscious. And when they grow up now, they are literally at each other's throats. So what can you do? Let me tell you a story. My sensei in Aikido is an Australian guy called Julius Abe. And I used to learn Aikido from Julius when I used to live in Bangalore in 1994. And at that time, Julius, he has 2 children, he and his wife, a son and a daughter. And at that time, they were very small. The daughter, I think, was maybe 3 or 4, and the son was about 5 years old. And Julius Abe, and they're all Australians. So Julius told me a wonderful story one day. He said, the children sleep in the next room, next to the master bedroom. The children have their own room, so they sleep in the other room. He said, every morning, the 2 of them, they come into my room and they fight with me. When I am lying in my bed, they come and they fight with me and they try to wrestle me and, they do all this. He said, I have an internal rule for myself. He said, when they come one by one, they always lose. But if they gang up together and come, then I fall down. Yeah? Imagine how he thinks. If they come and fight me individually, he said, I throw them. But if they come together, then I fall down. Children listen with their eyes. There is no need to give a long bhashan on the importance of being together, blah, blah, no. Just reward collective, collaborative behavior. In our case, many cases, what happens? That one child has a toy, his brother wants a toy, this one will not give it. Most parents, especially parents with money, or rather I should say parents with more money than sense, they will say, no problem, I'll buy you also a toy. ये करते कि नहीं करते? So what are you doing now? You are reinforcing a behavior to say, do not share what you have with your own brother. We'll give you your own. Flash forward 30 years, you are looking at breaking up your organization, you are looking at breaking up your family based on the same logic 30 years ago when those same 2 boys were 5 years old each, or 5 and 6. Teach them to share. Teach them to appreciate each other. Teach them that to fight your own brother is absolutely not acceptable behavior. To fight your own sister, absolutely not acceptable behavior. To give them more from your share, this is something for you to praise. This is something for you to applaud. This is something for you to encourage. Learning starts very, very young. Believe me, children learn so fast you won't believe. There's a friend of mine in the US, he was telling me this story. He said that they were sitting and watching some TV serial or something, and he had young children, and his youngest was 5 years old. So he said they had a rule. Now obviously if you're watching these serials and stuff, there is, there are things that are happening on that TV screen which you don't want your children to see. It's a shameful thing. If you don't want your children to see, then why are you seeing it? Why are you seeing it? So one day he said, my wife and I were sitting and watching, and his little daughter was there, and my wife, as soon as some scene started, my wife told her, whatever her name was, Mary or something, he said, please go get me a glass of water. So this one gets up and says, you're watching sex again? 5-year-old kid. You think you're very clever, right? You think a 5-year-old kid does not know what is sex? She may not know what is sex in the sense of all the details of sex, but she knows it is wrong. She knows that she shouldn't be seeing it. She knows that you shouldn't be seeing it. She knows it is something which is dishonorable, which should not be happening, and you are training them to do it without any sense of shame. We have reached a stage where parents, grandparents, and grandchildren all sit together on the same sofa and watch movies and watch TV serials which have every conceivable haram in the world showing on the screen. You have people smoking, you have people drinking, you have people whose relationships with each other are so convoluted, it's like a nest of snakes. You don't know where one begins and where one ends. And then you are very surprised that the children have moral values of alley cats. What do you expect? You're going to create Sahaba from that? So, ensure that you give them memories. Ensure also that you correct. In Africa, especially among the Zulus, but even generally in Africa, there's a saying. And the saying is that it takes the whole village to bring up a child. Today we have reached a stage, when I was in school, if I did anything wrong, and if the teacher complained, or if I got punished for that, and my parents came to know, then I would have hell to pay at home. And there was no way that my parents would accept. I think in my generation it didn't even occur to us. But if we had gone and said, that teacher has something against me, and that is why the teacher punished me. I actually didn't do anything wrong. I don't think anyone would have believed that. I don't know of anyone who even said it. In my generation, when we were growing up, if we did anything wrong, our uncles and aunts, and I'm not talking about direct relatives, the adults in our life, my parents' friends and our neighbors, so on, connected, unconnected, including servants, drivers and whoever they were, they would have absolutely no hesitation correcting us. And that didn't mean that we got slammed left, right and said, no, nobody beat us. But they would say something. I still remember that I referred to one of my father's friends. I actually said uncle. This was my father's friend, Ahmad Yar Khan. and his brother Khusro Yar Khan. I'm mentioning the name, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive them and fill their qubur with nur, because many of you know these people. I said something to Uncle Khusro, and I said Uncle Khusro, but Uncle Ahmad didn't hear the uncle. So he said to me, Baba, बड़ों का नाम लिए तो रिश्ता लगा के लेना, खाली नाम नहीं लेना. Very politely, he said, Baba, if you refer to an elder person, put a relationship with that name. Refer with a relationship. Don't just take the name. And I still remember very clearly that even though I knew I was being reprimanded for something I hadn't even done, I did not tell Uncle Ahmad, but you know, Uncle Ahmad, I said Uncle Khusro, you did not hear. No, I said, yes. I was being actually corrected for something, I hadn't even made the mistake. But it didn't even occur to me that I should say to Ahmad Yar Khan that, you know, you are wrong, you didn't hear me. No way, no way, no way. Against the adab. Against the adab. If the person tells you that you are wrong, period. Correct yourself. Khalas. Even if you didn't do it, you didn't do it. No problem. Now, my father, of course, he never heard this story. But if he had heard the story, do you think my father would have said to Uncle Ahmad, why are you correcting my son? Is he your son? You'll be surprised, and I don't think, maybe you will not be surprised, how many of these conversations actually happen. In the school, in the college, if a professor, if a teacher corrects a son and daughter, next thing you have a big issue because the parents come and they say, this is what the teacher said to my child, and they blah, blah, blah. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. If you don't want teachers to correct your children, why do you send them to school? Do yourself a favor, don't send them to school. What must a teacher do if not correct? So, build a support system around yourself, with your friends, with teachers, with whoever, whichever the elders are around you, and tell them directly and clearly, please, if you see my son or daughter doing something wrong, please correct them. Have no hesitation. Because you will be doing me a favor. I am not there all the time. And if you see them doing something wrong, correct them. You will be doing me a favor, you will be doing them a favor, because they need that. My brothers and sisters, we grow up, we get maturity, not because we grow in age. We grow up and we get maturity because of the company of elders, of older and hopefully wiser people. People who are more experienced in life. Sohbat se sahaba bane. Kitab padhne se sahaba nahi bane. The Sahaba of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had the sohbat of the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They didn't go to some university to become sahabi, no. They had the company of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and that is what mentoring is. A process of mentoring, I say, is a contact sport. It's the process of personal contact. Tarbiyah is a contact sport. Personal contact. You have to go and sit and be with an elder who will tell you, who will talk to you. Alhamdulillah, I had a series of such wonderful people in my life. Most of them not even Muslim. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. My parents taught me to connect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So I didn't have to have every other person as a Muslim. And I'll tell you some of the small things, but they stick in the mind and they guide your life. My mother always used to joke, and she used to say that all your friends are 15 years older than you, or more. And that was a fact. They were. I mean, all my friends were my father's age. And that was one of the best things that I think happened to me, that they were people who were older, so they were wiser. They gave me a perspective on life which I could never have got by myself, obviously. And none of my friends of my age could have given me that perspective because they were my age. So these older people gave me that perspective. And let me narrate to you a couple of stories. One of them, I was in her house and That was the first time I met this person, and his name was Rai Mahbub Narayan. And he was from the family of Maharaja Sir Kishan Prasad Bahadur. And eventually he became my teacher for Urdu when I was doing Urdu in my graduation. He became my teacher for Urdu, and then he taught me a lot of lessons of the history of Hyderabad as a state. He taught me about Hyderabadi culture. He taught me about many things. But the first time I met him, it was very interesting. First time I met him, I was in the house of another friend of my father's, also very, very dear friend of mine, a lady by the name of Mohini Rajan. So Auntie Mohini told me, she called and she said, tomorrow I am having a scholar, she was writing a book on the 6th Nizam, on Mir Mahbub Ali Khan. And so she was doing some research and so on. So she called me and she said, tomorrow I am having a scholar coming home, so would you like to meet him? I said, sure. So she said, come at such and such time. So I went there. Now, as the time approached and he was supposed to come at 11 o'clock, so around 5 to 11 or something, she said to me, she said, he is a great scholar, but he is not wealthy. So he has no car. He is going to be coming in a rickshaw. And when he gets out of the rickshaw, you will find that his clothes may not be expensive. His clothes will be very simple. And he will be wearing slippers. But you are going to go down those steps and you are going to receive him from that auto rickshaw. And you are going to make salam. Now I would have done that anyway, but this was the instruction to me. And she said, at no point in time should your expression or your behavior indicate that he does not have your wealth. We respect knowledge. We don't respect money. And that's exactly what happened. Rai Mahbub Narayan Sahib got out of the auto. He used to wear a dhoti and he would wear a kurta on top and he would wear a cap. He got out of the auto, I made salam. And I am at that time, I was about maybe, probably about 13 or something, 13 or 14. So in our proper Hyderabadi style, I said, Ji, maida was karta. This man was close to 70 years old. He got up, he stood up and he returned my salam. 12-year-old kid. 12-year-old kid. The same man, few years later, he used to live in Diwan Deodi in Shalibanda. This is beyond Charminar. And at that time, we used to live in Sanat Nagar. My father was the medical officer of Hyderabad Alwins, and we had those big houses in Sanat Nagar, we used to live in there. And I used to go for my Urdu tuition, I used to cycle from Sanat Nagar to Shalibanda every day. So I remember I used to go and there was this routine we had, that I would reach there, I would knock on the door. Rai Mahbub Narayan Sahib was Kayast, he was Hindu and from UP, and culturally they have the same culture as ours, which means that the women are in parda and so on, they don't come out before even though you are a 13-year-old kid, the ladies of the house, they don't come out in front of you. So I would knock on the door and whoever answered the door, they would say, Theriye, please wait. And then Rai Mahbub Narayan Sahib himself would come and he would open the door. I would make salam, he would make salam, he would take me inside and we would sit in the parlor. We had a routine of 1 hour of teaching whichever book I was studying, and then a cup of tea would come and he would have a cup of tea, I would have a cup of tea, 1 biscuit each. And then 1 other hour of conversation. And in that conversation, I learned the whole history of Hyderabad, from the Qutub Shahis to the Asaf Jahis and all of that. The building of the Golconda Fort, the establishment of the city and so on and so on. So I won't go into all the details, but this was our routine. The reason I'm describing this to you is because what comes next. So this I would do. I was to go to his, for this tuition I used to go. I was actually supposed to go 3 times a week, but I enjoyed it so much I used to go every day. And he also didn't mind. We had a good relationship. Now came Ramadan. And of course we grew up in a time when if you fasted and you prayed, nobody considered that to be a favor on Allah. So none of your other things were reduced. Today we are in a state where if the child is fasting and then after he finishes his fast, then the mother or the father or the grandmother or somebody, if they say, come for Tarawih, he says, "Arey, bachcha pura din roza raha, ab usko Tarawih ko bhi le jate. Allah pe itna bada ihsan kara aur kar bolte." करते नहीं करते बोल सुबह को फजर को तहज्जुद तो भूल जाओ फजर को उठाने को गए तो उन्हें बहुत थक गया पढ़ लेता बाद में वही अगर इंग्लिश का ट्यूशन रहा तो जूता मार के निकालते घर में से बट इन आवर डे डिडंट डू ऑल दिस यू फास्टिंग नो फास्टिंग यू हैव टू गो सो फास्टिंग आई वुड साइकिल फ्रॉम सनत नगर टू शालीबंडा. So the first of Ramadan, I was fasting. I reached there, same routine, except one change. After that first 1 hour, Mahamudana Sahib tells me, "Baba, agar aap ijazat diye to मैं अभी हाजिर होता हूँ." In our Urdu we say when we गायब होने का रहा तो हाजिर होता हूँ बोलते. So he said, if you permit me, I will just appear, meaning I will just disappear and I will reappear. So I said, "Ji." So he went off into the next room and 10 minutes later he would come back and we continue our class. Now this happened first of Ramadan, second of Ramadan, third of Ramadan. I am getting more and more curious. Where is he disappearing? And exactly at the same time he is vanishing somewhere. Where is he going? So I am thinking of this. So obviously, there's only so much of suspense that a 12-year-old, 13-year-old kid can take. So that day when he said, "Ji, main abhi hazir hota hu," I said, "Ji, aap hazir hoye, let me see." So when he went into the other room, and these were the olden days, you had these doors which had wooden slats for half the door, and you could open it and the louvers, and you open the louvers and you get some breeze and so on. So there was always a gap. So when he went into the other room, I got up and I peeped through the hole. And what do I see? I see Rai Mahamudana Sahib having his cup of tea. Why did he go into the other room? Because I am fasting. He did not want to drink tea in front of me when I am fasting. So he goes into the other room to have his cup of tea. This is how you learn. You learn in the company of elders. You learn by watching elders. So what do you think your children and grandchildren are learning? When they see you cursing your servants, when they see you behaving in obnoxious ways, when they see you being inconsiderate to the help in your house, when they see you sitting and watching all kinds of lewd nonsense on the television, what do you think they're learning? I remember many years ago, I was invited to dinner in one place, big family. And of course, whenever anyone invites me to dinner, they never give me food for free. They always make me work for it. So they said, "Zara kuch baat kariye. Please give a short lecture. Otherwise we won't feed you." So since I had to eat some food, so I said, "Okay, I will give a lecture." So now as I am sitting down, getting ready to give this lecture, one of the young boys from that family, he comes and whispers into my ear. He tells me, "Yawar uncle, tell them not to swallow other people's property." Wallahi, Allah is witness. Allah is witness, this happened. He tells me, "Yawar uncle, tell them not to eat up other people's property." What respect do you think that boy will have for his own father, for his own uncles? Tell me. Another place, And this happened much more recently. This happened literally last year. One of my business family clients, big business, millionaires, big dispute between brothers. So I am advisor to them, I am also sort of arbitrator and whatnot. So they invited me, they said, please come and help us out and so on. So I went. So we had this family meeting, the uncles and then the nephews and all that were there. So after the meeting finished, half the day, we broke for Salah, Muslim family, Muslim business family. So we broke for Salah and we broke for lunch. So after Salah, when I was at the buffet counter, this thing was happening in the Taj in that particular city. I'm deliberately being vague because I don't want you to start guessing who it is. I mentioned the Taj because to show that it's wealthy people, right? So I was at the food counter when one of the young nephews, he comes to me and he says, Sheikh Yawar, tell them not to love the dunya so much. He said, tell my father and tell my uncles not to love the dunya so much. Ask them, are they going to take this with them when they die? Why are they fighting? Why are they fighting? He's a teenager. He's a teenager. What respect do you think that those children will have for those elders? Who creates this? We create it as elders. Another very, very important thing to inculcate is discipline. Children forever test boundaries. So make the boundaries clear. How are the boundaries set? You will find children will come to a boundary and they want to break the boundary. So then they start throwing tantrums, they will yell and scream and, do all kinds of stuff. And the parents then collapse. They succumb. So now the child understands that no does not mean no. No means maybe if you create enough nuisance for me. So the meaning of no is maybe if you create enough nuisance for me. Don't do that. Clear boundaries. Discipline. Structuring of time. Sleeping at a particular time. Waking up at a particular time. You will be doing your children the greatest favor in their entire lives if you can get them into a structured pattern of behavior, of living a disciplined life. Greatest favor. Don't worry about how much they will moan and groan. They will moan and groan, but get them into that. And one of the best ways of doing that is to get them used to physical activity. Outdoor sports. Not watching them. Not watching cricket, playing cricket. Not watching football, playing football. Outdoor sports. Two benefits, good for their health. Secondly, they run all the energy out of the field. When they come home, they are tired, they can go to sleep early. And then the next day they wake up and they go. And the benefit of team sports is that there's a lot of socializing learning. Lot of learning about leadership, about followership, about collaboration, about teamwork, which happens on the sports field, which you cannot even teach if you want to teach. But it happens on the sports field in a very nice atmosphere. The children learn all those lessons, very, 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 very important life lessons they learn there. And plus it's also good for their body. Today, across cultures, there is a problem of obesity in children. And the reason for that obesity is most of the time, I'm not, as all of you know very well, I'm not anti-woman, but in this particular case, it is overindulgent mothers. And if you don't believe me, ask your wives, what is the primary conversation that they hear when they are sitting in their, another language issue, kitty parties. Whoever invented this term kitty party, amazing, huh? And people have no senseless. We just use. I mean, you don't feel embarrassed to use that term for yourself. Where are you going? I'm going to a kitty party. Wow, man, how intelligent is that? So what is the dominant conversation in that kitty party? What my child eats. मैं पकाई नहीं तो मेरे हाथ का नहीं रहा तो खाता ही नहीं. पोटे को 4 दिन खाना को डालो सब खाता. कैसा नहीं खाता? भूख लगी सब खाता. So what do you have? Now you have 30-year-olds who don't want to leave home. 20-something who don't want to leave home. Why? Because they're used to their hot parathas. And that's why my definition for this is one of my tweets. Fat, flabby, functionalness freaks. That's what you create. Overindulgence in food, and worse still, overindulgence in aerated and soft drinks. All of them, they're just even. The ones which are not halal, they're not halal. The ones which are halal are just pure sugar, water, essence, color. That's it. There is more fruit in your shampoo than in your aerated drink. So at least drink the shampoo. Maybe it's good for your intestines. Actual real fruit. There is more, I'm not joking, this is serious. There is more actual lemon in your dishwashing liquid than there is in the Sprite or whatever that you drink. There's essence in that. There's no lime juice in that. There's essence in that. Actual lime juice is in your dishwashing fluid. So drink dishwashing fluid. Discipline with regard to timing. Discipline with regard to food. Overindulgence is you will actually make those children. It's literally like giving them a handicap in life. Endurance, absolutely critical. Read the biographies of great conquerors in the world, and you will find one common factor. The one common factor between Genghis Khan, Julius Caesar, Khalid bin Walid, Salahuddin Ayyubi, one common factor is what? Physical toughness. Physical toughness. Endurance, the ability to take pain, the ability to live without food, without water, without sleep for long periods of time. Very, very important to inculcate that in life. And as I told you, children listen with their eyes. Again, another very important thing, and that is the second last one, and we finish with the last one, is to teach them to manage money. Most of the upbringing, so-called upbringing of children that I have seen, is you teach children to become consumers. You teach children to spend. That doesn't require much training. You give them money, they will spend it. How many parents are there who give children pocket money, and then at the end of the day, at the end of the month, they say, what was your budget? Did you make a budget? In this budget, out of this pocket money, how much did you spend on yourself? How much did you budget to invest in order to make the money grow? How much in that budget did you mark out for charity? Who told you that a 10-year-old should not give charity? Who told you that a 5-year-old should not give charity? Is there a rule to say that charity should not be given by children? There's a very nice book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Read it. It talks about mindset change. How many of you give your children pocket money and say, how much did you earn from this pocket money? I was consulting with one of my big business families in South Africa. It's a huge, big family, lots of youngsters. So the patriarch, the head of the family, he said, please give a lecture for these children. They're all young adults. We find that they are totally sort of irresponsible and so on and so on. And may Allah bless the Muslims. Many of these people, our Muslim friends in South Africa, mashallah, they're wealthy people. And so their children consider driving a Toyota Camry an insult to themselves. Toyota Corolla, even their drivers don't drive. But Toyota Camry, they consider it an insult because they say, how can I drive anything other than a BMW or a Mercedes? And these are all 20-somethings. So one of them asked me, he said, I was asking my dad to give me money to buy a car. I said, which car? So he said, X5. That was the latest one of those days. BMW X5. So I asked him, I said, so how much does it cost? He said, roughly about 500,000 rand at that time. So I said, let me give you a suggestion. I said, why don't you ask your dad? I said, I will recommend to your dad to give you that 500,000 rand. He'll give you. I said, take the money. Go and buy a Toyota Corolla, which is a fine car. Nothing is wrong with that car. Go and buy a Corolla, which will cost you 100,000 rand. The 400,000 rand, invest. Grow the money. They were all complaining about how the elders don't want to hand over the business to them and how they are. So I said, I'll teach you how you can get your elders to present the keys to the shop on a platter for you. I said, take the money for the car, buy a Corolla, take the 400,000, grow it, go and buy an X5 and present it to your dad. This is my gift for you. I said, how did you get that? He said, Daddy, you remember that money you gave me? I invested the money grew, and here is my gift to you. I said, your father will return that gift to you along with the keys to his business. I'll guarantee you that. Because you just proved that you know how to do business. You just proved that you know the value of money. You just proved that you know how to grow money. And that's why I know I'm being unkind, but some things, one of my students and nephews, he told me once, he said, the best thing about you is we are never in any doubt. So I tell them, I said, don't be beggars. Stop being beggars. Always like this, hand like this to the father. I want a phone. I want this. I want that. I want the best phone. Why? The best phone gives the best speech. If you curse here, the other fellow is hearing ayat of the Quran. Is that smartphones and stupid people? That's why I always say smartphones and stupid people. That's why in the masjid you come for a Qiyamul Layl and the phone rings. Who's calling you? Malakul Maut? Amazing. You come all the way from wherever you come for Qiyamul Layl, you're standing behind the qari, beautiful recitation and so on, and the phone rings. For God's sake, man, take that damn battery out. Do something, right? How many times? You're witness to every 2 days I have to make these announcements here. And if it was only this masjid, you might say, well, you know what, you got the most stupid people in the world. No, this is a problem in every single masjid in the world, including the haram. You know and I know this. I even know people, the fellow is praying, phone rings, he picks up the phone, he says, I'm praying, he puts it in his pocket. Ajib. Teach them to handle money. Teach them budgeting. Teach them how to invest, how to grow the money. Buy 10 packets of biscuits for 10 rupees each, sell it for 11 rupees each, you make 10 rupees. Teach them. They're never too young to learn. 5-year-old, let him learn. Let him go do business. That is how you will build that's how the maturity will come. Discipline, teach them to handle money. Third thing, Reading. You might be amazed that my brother Imran Adaris, he gave me some statistics, I was absolutely blew my mind. So somebody did this research and they said that people in America on an average read 11 books per year. In America, people read 11 books per year. In the whole of the Middle East, they read half a page per year. So I said we consider ourselves Muslims to be Ahlul Kitab, no? So we should say we are Ahlul Nis Safa. We are the people of half a page. We are not a people of the book. We are people of half a page. How will you learn if you don't read? Reading opens the doors to the expanse of thought, of understanding of the globe. So teach children to read. My father, from the earliest age, I was also very fortunate that I was born, and people of my generation were born in a time when we did not have all these nonsensical, useless things. We didn't have television, we didn't have all of this stuff. So we had, alhamdulillah, no resistance. But now, of course, you have children who have television, which, of course, as you know, all 5 years old and all 6-year-old children, they go to the shop and they buy television sets, and they bring it in the house and they designate a room called TV room. Right? You must blame the children always, right? Please understand this. Many times people come and tell me this. They tell me, Sheikh, please tell our children not to watch television. So one day I actually told somebody this. I said, yeah, sure, I'll tell them, absolutely. I'll tell them not to watch television. But tell me which one bought the television. So let me tell him first. You go and buy the television. You bring it and put it in the house. And then you say the children shouldn't watch it. So who should watch it? The jinns? So my father used to, he had a habit, he used to read 3 books at a time. I also read 3 books at a time. So he used to give me books. And then he would say, he had to do it only once because after that I never made the mistake again. He gave me a book and he said, what's in the book? What did you learn? So I started off by saying, I said the author is saying this. He said, no, hold on. I know what the author is. I read the book before you. So I don't want to know what the author is saying. I know that already. What did you learn? What is your takeaway from this book? So I usually read 2 to 3 books simultaneously. So it's good practice for me. I keep 2-3 plots in my mind. And there are 2 or 3 completely different. There's a book of history, there's a book of something else and so on. So that's the kind of thing I read. And I keep notes. And this was taught to me by my father from the earliest age. My father said, if you have a book, you'll never be bored in your life. So read. I have read all kinds of things. I won't say everything because there's, alhamdulillah, always much more to read than you think, but I have read every single kind of thing. Religion, science, philosophy, history. One of my favorite readings is history because of the number of lessons I learn from history. So teach the children to read and sit and talk to them. It's amazing how many adults today, I'm always, I always think, you say live and learn. I always think that when I hear some statement, I think, well, this is the limit. I can never hear anything. And somebody tells me something which is bigger than that. One of my friends who shall remain nameless, when I told him this, he said, Yawar Baig, I have never read a book in my life. He said, I have actually never read a book. Now, I'm not talking about if you're an engineer, you would have whatever course books. I'm talking about reading a book other than your curriculum. And that's the reason why, and that's the last point I'm coming to, which is communication. And that's why our communication is so lousy. The reality today is that most adults cannot talk for 5 minutes grammatically correctly in any language. It's not only English. Neither English, nor Urdu, nor whichever language. They cannot talk for 5 minutes and hold a thought and present that thought clearly. So how are you going to teach your children? And the reason you can't do that is because you don't read. If you read, automatically you will learn. vocabulary of people, how many words have you got in your mind? There was a time, again, culture, I'm not just being nostalgic for the sake of nostalgia. When I was growing up, my father would sit us down, and this, I keep saying my father, not because he is the greatest man in the world, according to me he was, but it's not because of that, because that was an indicator of the culture of the time. This happened in almost every educated home that I know. It's not unique to my house. My father was very interested in the poetry of Iqbal, Allama Iqbal rahmatullahi alayhi. So he would sit us down, and at that time we have 5 brothers and sisters, I'm the oldest, and at that time I was about 10. So that means all the others were younger than that. He would sit us all down, and my mother and my father would quote Iqbal's poetry. He would quote and she would quote. Obviously 3/4 of that went over my head. For my younger siblings, even more went over their head. But over the years, at that time, it went over the head, but we remembered the words. Over the years, the words started making sense. When we lived life, when we saw life, then those words which we heard, memories, those words which we heard years and years earlier, started making sense. They got life. What if we had never heard those words? How many of you have ever quoted Iqbal's poetry? Allama Iqbal's poetry. How many of you have read Allama Iqbal's poetry? How many of you don't even know who Allama Iqbal is? Or was? Very, very important. Why poetry? Because poetry, by definition, because of how it is written, is the essence of understanding. In prose, you can write a whole page. But in poetry, you have to collect all of that into 2 sentences, which is a share. Mr. Aula, Mr. Sari. So to be able to collect a huge amount of knowledge and understanding into a precise statement, that is the essence of communication. And how do you learn that? By this. We used to be made to do précis writing. At home, also in school. We had book reading lists. We had to read the book and then present that in the class. And say, this is what the book is about. This is what the author said. This is where I disagree with the author. And people would listen very carefully and say, okay, this person disagrees with the author. Good, means you are using your brains. And final point of communication is manners. People think communication is about talking. Communication is not about talking. Communication is about being believed. Communication is about people being attracted to you, people wanting to listen to you. And that comes from manners. And the basic rule of manners is a smile on the face. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said it is sadaqah. But we grow up and we have children. You want to see his teeth, you have to take him to a dentist. What's wrong with smiling? Why must you always walk around looking like you just came from a funeral or something? Smile, salam, greet people, get up, do things. Serve your elders. Doesn't matter who the elder is. Maybe you don't even know the person. Somebody enters the masjid, elderly person, he doesn't have a chair. Why do you need to be told to bring a chair for so-and-so? Why do you need to be told? You got 2 eyes, you can see. You got 2 legs and 2 hands, you can walk and you can pick up a chair. Why do you need to be told that? Because no one ever taught you. In your environment, you never saw that happening. Don't do this to your children. Very, very important for us to teach them manners. Believe me, I work internationally, across cultures. And I can tell you from personal experience that you get business, you convince people, you win in negotiations, 90% of it is because of good manners. And good manners consists of controlling yourself. I am reminded of a friend of mine who told me this wonderful story. He said this, he was with another friend of his, and they went to buy something, and the shopkeeper was very rude. He was very rude. And he said, but my friend, he didn't lose his cool, nothing. He dealt with the man and he came out. So he said, I asked him, I said, how come you never got angry? This man was so rude, but you didn't get angry. He said, my friend said to me something which stuck in my mind. He said, my friend said to me, why must I allow him to decide how I will behave? Why must I allow him to decide how I will behave? How many of us are like this? Our behavior, we are like puppets in the hands of somebody else. Someone else can get me mad, someone else can get me angry, someone else can get me to start behaving like some fool, yelling and screaming and doing all that. All in their control. He does something and I start jumping up and down. For what? Don't you have a brain? Can't you think? Can't you say the same thing politely? Because we justify things to ourselves. I had one of my elderly friends who was the editor of the Times of India in Bombay at that time, a man by the name of Mr. Arur. And I was in Bombay for something, and at that time I think I was about 16, 17 years old, and I was in his house and we were chatting. There was some issue, I can't even remember now what the issue was, but I was very passionately arguing in favor of something. And I had this whole logic about my point of view. I remember he listened to me quietly, he didn't say anything, he listened to my whole thing. And when I ran out of steam, he told me something which stayed in my mind and stays in my mind always. He said to me, Yawar, just because you can justify something, it does not make it right. I'm going to repeat that statement. It's such a beautiful statement, it's worth writing in gold. He said, just because you can justify something, it does not make it right. Because that's the reality. If you are articulate, if you can talk, you can justify anything in the world, believe me. All you need is to be articulate, and all you need is to have a flexible conscience, and you can justify anything in the world. But that does not make it right. What is haqq, what is batil is batil. The truth does not become false, the false does not become truth, just because you have an argument, just because you have a justification. Look at every global conflict which is happening today. And you know and I know that the reason that conflict is happening, the reason why people are murdering each other is because the murderers think that it is highly justified to do that. Do you think those murderers are losing any sleep over that? No. But is their action correct? No. Teach that to the children. Obviously your children, inshallah, will not go around murdering anybody. But at the same time, the issue of justifications. The issue of justifications. Why does your room look like a calamity about to happen? Why is it that you can't put things in shelves? And there is this reason. Excuses do not make right into wrong, and they do not make wrong into right. Problems need solutions, not excuses. So teach your children this, inshallah. And to close, one very important thing. Teach them to obey the law. Teach them to obey the law of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and teach them to obey the law of the country that they live in. Let me give you the Sharia angle to this. In the Sharia, if you are living in a country and you are a citizen of a country, then you have entered into a covenant with the country to say that you will abide by the laws of that nation. That's a general covenant. If I say I'm a citizen of India and I am a citizen of India, it means that I have entered into a covenant with my country, India, to say that I will obey the laws of this land. Our scholars have, Muslim scholars have decreed that in such a situation, if you break a law deliberately, then you have committed a major sin for which Allah will punish you. And some scholars have gone to the extent of saying that you have exited Islam. Why? Nothing to do with India. People say, but you say non-Muslim government, nothing to do with that. It is to do with the fact that you entered a covenant and you broke the covenant. You made a promise and you broke the promise, which in Islam is kufr. Islam does not give you the right to break a promise to a non-Muslim. No. A promise is a promise. Made to anyone, doesn't matter. Islamically, it's a promise. So in this country, for example, wildlife is protected. You are not allowed to shoot animals. It's a matter of great shame for me that Muslims take pride in breaking that law. But let me give you the Sharia angle to that. If you go and shoot a deer, if you go and shoot a rabbit, if you go and shoot a jungle cock, if you go and shoot a peacock, whatever you shoot, if you eat that, the shooting is haram because you broke the law of the land. You broke the covenant that you made with the government, with the nation, to say that you will obey the law of the land, and you broke it, number one. Number two, that meat is haram. That meat is haram. You eat that meat, it's like eating pork. It is haram. The same meat, that's why I tell people, you really want to shoot something? Go to South Africa. Go to Namibia. Go to Botswana. Go to the game farms, buy a license, go and shoot the animal. It is halal, it is jaiz. Eat the meat, bring the meat home if you can bring the meat home, feed the world, no problem. Because it is legal, you are doing it legally. Same thing you do in a country where it is not permitted, it is haram. We take great pride in doing that. Senseless behavior. You're teaching your children to break the law of the land. In this country, you are liable to pay your taxes. By all means, save your taxes using legal means. Whatever means to save taxes and get refund, do all that, no problem. But if you actually fudge your accounts, then you are breaking a law of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not a law of the country. You're breaking a law of Allah. You might say, well, how is income tax the law of Allah? Income tax is not the law of Allah. Sticking by the covenant is the law of Allah. Not breaking your word is the law of Allah. Imagine what kind of a situation we will have if the people can say that Muslims do not lie. And I want to close with a real life today story about this. And today means a few years ago. In South Africa, in the apartheid days, when the government was white, Dutch Reformed Church, Christian, legally, if a Muslim was called into the witness box to bear witness, a Muslim was not expected, and it was not obligatory on the Muslim to swear to speak the truth. Everyone else, including Christians, they had to swear on the Bible, I will speak the truth and nothing but the truth. But if a Muslim was called into the witness box to give witness, he didn't have to swear. Why? Because they said Muslims don't lie. They are accountable to their God. They don't lie. So we formally, government of South Africa, formally judicial system in the court, a Muslim is not required to swear before he gives testimony because Muslims don't lie. Sadly, that rule no longer exists because they discovered that Muslims lie. How will you teach your children this? By speaking the truth. And that is why, my brothers and sisters, and this is for the youngsters, That is the reason why they say Jannah is under the feet of your mother and your father is the door to Jannah. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, the mother and the father are the two doors to Jannah. When one dies, one door is closed. When the other dies, the other door is closed. That is why the dua of the parents for their children is a dua that does not have any blocks. Goes straight to the arsh of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's the reason why Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam also said, and he said this to the women because the women tend to be more prone to that. He said, do not curse your children. Now you might say, why will a mother curse her children? It's our language. कहाँ गया रे माठी मिले अरे मरता कहीं को नहीं रे कहीं को पैदा हुआ रे बोलते नहीं बोलते और था Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, don't say that because it is dua and Allah will accept the dua. मरता कहीं को नहीं रे मर गया मालूम होता. So for the children, your job is to serve the parents. Your job is to obey the parents. Your job is not to do tarbiyah of the parents. That's a big nuisance. The children are always doing tarbiyah of the parents. Don't do this, don't do that, don't say this, don't say that. That's not your job. That you leave that. Leave it to the father or the mother. They know what to do or what not to do. Even if they are doing wrong, you make dua. You start praying. Suddenly, let the father suddenly wonder, why is my son praying so many nawafil? Because you are saying all kinds of stuff. He's trying to tell Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to change your heart. Right? So let's do that. Don't get into the issue of trying to correct your parents. A lot of unnecessary grief. Serve them, be nice to them, be good to them, be kind to them, be highly, highly respectful because they are worthy of that respect. All the ayat on the Quran in Surah Al-Isra and various places Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned, the only condition in which you as a son or a daughter are not only permitted but you are advised and you are ordered to disobey your parents is when they tell you to disobey Allah. When they tell you to disobey Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If they tell you to commit shirk, if they tell you not to pray, if they tell you not to follow the sunnah. I was speaking in a school in Chennai many years ago, and a little girl was maybe about 7 or 8 years old. She put up her hand after I finished my speech. She put up her hand, she had a question. I said, come. She tried to speak from there, I couldn't hear it, so I said, come. She came up here, and she tells me, I want to wear the hijab, and I don't want to watch television, but my mother forces me to take off the hijab and my mother forces me to watch television. What do you say? What do you say? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent, many parents have this thing of, please tell the children what are our rights. I tell people, anyone who wants to know about rights, I tell them forget rights, focus on duties. Because you will be questioned about duties, you will not be questioned about rights. And if you focus on duties, rights automatically get fulfilled. Whether it is husband and wife, whether it is children and parents, forget rights, focus on duties. Your duty is to do the tarbiyah of your children. You do the tarbiyah of your children correctly, what kind of children will you have? Children who know your rights, children who will serve you, children who will respect you, children who will do anything to be with their parents. Today in this city, how many of us know people who are old, living alone? They need help. Maybe they have some servants, but a servant is a servant. That person will give an arm and a leg to have a child with them at that time. Yes or no? Where are the children? Somebody is in America, somebody is in England, somebody is somewhere. Why? Because, oh, my career is so important. But before you blame the child, ask yourself, who taught them that career is more important than Allah? Career is more important than Salah. Career is more important than Sunnah. Career is more important than the rights of and hukuk of elders. Who taught them this lesson? You. So now, that chicken came home to roost. When it's a time for you, the children said, career. You are the one taught me career. So I've got my career. Instead of that, if you have taught them that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the Raziq, career or no career, what is written for you, you will get. Focus on your duties, and you have a duty to the parents. You have a duty to elders. Focus on that, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you barakah in your career. If that was the lesson you had taught them, those children would be with you. They would be serving you. There would be a coolness of your eyes, and nothing would happen to their career, believe me. Because their career is not in your hands and not in their hands, it's in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I have yet to see a dutiful son or a dutiful daughter who loves and obeys his parents, who serves his parents, whose career has suffered because of that, who has lost out in the world because of that. I have yet to see that. I have many examples, including myself, of the du'as of the parents helping you in places where you could not have helped yourself. I can tell you many stories. I'm not going to tell you. This has been long enough, this session. Many stories. But I do not even have a single story of a person who was good to the parents, respectful and served and so on. And because of that, their career went down the drain, their business went down the drain. Not a single story like that. The dua of the parents is your shield. The dua of the parents is the umbrella which shields you from the balas and the calamities that descend. So make sure you earn the du'as of your parents. And that's not only when they are old and decrepit. Every time, right now, jump up, serve them, be good to them, be kind to them, be respectful to them. Don't be lying down like a cow or something when the father or mother comes into the room. Get up. Volunteer to do things. Don't wait for constantly to be told, go do this, go do that, go do this, go do that. No, volunteer. If you are home on a weekend, tell your mom, just relax. I'm going to do the work today. No, what is that we eat? Grass. Go cook food. You know how to cook food, right? So go cook food. Tell your mom, tell your dad, no, today I'm going to cook the food. I'm going to give you a surprise. Do that. Let your mother wake up and say, wow, what happened to the house? The house is fantastic, clean, shining, everything. What happened? I woke up earlier and I was doing this. Maulana Siddiq Bandvi Rahmatullah Alayh in Banda. Every time I say my last story, I say another story. Yeah? Okay, this is dead last. I'm talking about examples. And the story was told to me by Maulana Rashid Sahib. He said, Maulana Bandvi Rahmatullah Alayh, he has a madrasa, or he passed away Rahmatullah Alayh. He started a madrasa in the Chambal Valley. Of all places in the world, the land of dacoits, the land of highway robbers. Alone, he went there and he started a Hifz madrasa in the Chambal Valley. There's a long story of how it started and so on and so on. But this friend of mine who is from Nadwa Tolama, he said we were graduate students, and one of the part of the training was you go and visit the other scholars and you spend some time in their company and so on. So he said we went to Maulana Siddiq Bandvi Rahmatullah's place, to Banda, and we were in his company. He said, I noticed that contrary to the norm, he said the toilets in the madrasa was spotlessly clean. Now, unfortunately, that is not the norm in our places. Masajid and madrasas and all that, filthiest toilets. So he said, I was very surprised. How come this place toilets are so clean? And he said, toilets were not just clean. He said, first thing in the morning when you woke up in the morning, you went to the toilet is spotlessly clean. He said, how is this? How is it? Who is doing it? What's happening? So he said, I decided to actually watch. He said, what do I see? He said, around 2:30 in the night. He said, who do I see coming out of the madrasa? The toilets are outside the madrasa in a long line. He said, I see Maulana Siddiq Bandvi Rahmatullah Alayh wearing a lungi. He's tied a lungi. He is coming with a bucket and brush and brooms. He goes into the toilet. He said when he came out from the house, from his place, I thought he's going to the toilet. He was going to the toilet, but he was not going to the toilet to do anything. He washed the toilet, 1, 2, 3, 4. All the toilets in the madrasa are being washed by the Nazim of the madrasa. He's washing, cleaning all the toilets at 2:30 in the morning, and then he said after that he washed, he made wudu, and he went into the masjid to start his tahajjud. Nobody knew. Nobody knew. And this friend of mine discovered because he sort of lay in wait for him to see, who is this? I want to find out who's cleaning the toilet. Give them memories. Give your children memories. Because that's the best thing you can give for them. That's a long-lasting thing. Won't go away. They live with them as long as they live. And as I said, when you look at that child, you're not looking at one child. You're looking at 2 generations. You're looking at 2 generations, minimum. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give you children who will be a coolness to your eyes. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I ask Allah to give the children the sense to serve their parents so that their parents' du'as will be with them all their lives. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give you children who will be a credit not only to you but to the entire Ummah Muslima, so that when people talk about Muslims and children, and they will say the best behaved children, the best children are the children of the Muslims. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us this so that we can spread goodness around us in society where everybody benefits. Brothers and sisters, remember, as far as Muslims are concerned, a Muslim is supposed to be good for everyone in society, not only Muslims. Everyone in society, Muslim, Hindu, Christian, Sikh, atheist, whatever, they must see the Muslims as a source of khair, as a source of goodness for them in society, and that will happen only when we focus on the upbringing of our children. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us to do that and to make it easy for us. Wa sallallahu ala nabiyil kareem wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajmain bi rahmatika ya arhamar rahimin walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.